Hey, good afternoon or good morning, everybody, from wherever you're joining us from. Thank you so much for joining us for this panel discussion. I know you have a choice as we have some great panelists joining this session, as well as our other panel, which is running simultaneously. So thank you for choosing this one. What an incredible start to our annual conference with our keynote speaker, Dr. Rattray. I hope that you're all able to join his keynote talk. And congratulations also to Dr. Sue Hall for her NICU Hero Award. Very well deserved. We hope that you managed to grab some lunch, check your emails, grab a coffee, and get ready for our afternoon sessions. I wanted to start, as we all know, November is Prematurity Awareness Month. I did want to acknowledge all of you, all of us, parents of preemies who are attending, those of you who may have been born prematurely yourselves, and of course, thanking and honouring all of you who care for not just premature infants, but for their parents as well. So let's introduce ourselves. We do have our chat open, and you can add where you're joining us from on there. And there is also a Q&A that we'll be monitoring throughout the session. Questions can be added there as well as in the chat, and we will answer those throughout. My name is Christine Tester, and I am joining you today from Austin, Texas. I am the hospital program manager at Hand to Hold and a peer specialist supervisor, overseeing our team of mental health peer specialists in our partner hospitals. More importantly, I'm a parent of 3 boys, including a son who had heart surgery when he was born, and a premature daughter who died in the NICU when she was 6 weeks old. I am joined today by 2 panelists, and we do have a third who is having some technical issues. I'm hoping that she'll be able to join, but we are going to make a start. So let's make some introductions. First of all, Diana. Diana is a Dominican American wife and 3-time NICU mum. Her oldest NICU baby is now 15 years of age, and she had 2 pandemic babies, now 3 and 2. As an Afro-Latina, she understands the cultural dynamics of being both Hispanic and Black. As a bilingual mental health peer specialist at Hand to Hold, she provides vital emotional and psychosocial support to NICU families and drawing from her own experiences. When facilitating our virtual groups for Black NICU and Spanish-speaking NICU parents, she gets to hear the experiences and perspectives of those families and their interactions with NICU professionals. She is currently pursuing her master's degree in psychology with a focus on applied behavior analysis. Welcome, Diana. And Cynthia is a bilingual mental health counselor at Hand to Hold, as well as a virtual family support specialist. Cynthia is also a mother to 3 boys and an 8-year-old Schnauzer. Her NICU experience was after the birth of her second son, Rafael. Cynthia was induced at 38 weeks due to fetal macrosomia. Her son had a 4-day NICU stay due to thermal and gastro issues that lasted for the first 14 months of his life. Her 2 younger sons also have developmental disorders that have shaped Cynthia's career path and her love for helping parents living with full hands and full hearts. She earned her master's degree in clinical mental health counseling and behavior analysis in Florida. Cynthia strives to provide excellent service and support, a sense of community, and a safe space for NICU families. So thank you so much, both of you, for being here. So the goal of our Hand to Hold conference is to bring together NICU parents and NICU professionals to learn, discuss, and inspire advocacy to improve the immediate and long-term mental health of NICU families. The goals of this session will mirror those overarching objectives. Today, we are going to identify different aspects of pregnancy and childbirth, which, when they go down an unexpected path, namely a NICU stay, impact a parent's emotional and mental health. It can also disrupt cultural traditions and beliefs. We will talk about how parents from different backgrounds may react or respond emotionally in different ways to the NICU experience, ways that may not be universally understood or deemed acceptable, and that might be shaped by what has come before, whether it stems from family or cultural dynamics to a parent's own personal trauma. We're looking to explore how not just education, but also compassion, understanding, and awareness, as well as a healthy dose of curiosity, can lead towards bridging gaps in understanding and communication. We're not here to label parents, and neither are we here to criticize, call out, or discredit providers in the NICU. Our panelists have clarified that they're giving a personal perspective, often based upon their own experiences, but that their viewpoints, traditions, values, or customs don't necessarily mean that they are shared by everyone who has the same cultural background. Our session is titled Cultural Considerations when Supporting NICU Families. And I first asked myself the definition of cultural consideration or being culturally competent. Obviously, language and terminology both evolve, and we're seeing a shift from cultural competence to intercultural competence, cultural humility, sensitivity. In a sense, this identifies not just knowledge or understanding, but more importantly, a willingness and readiness to be open, to be curious, to put aside our preconceptions, and to recognize our own prejudices and implicit biases. So with that long introduction to our panelists, what does the term cultural considerations mean to you personally, perhaps, to start off with? Cynthia, would you like to go first?
Absolutely. I would say cultural competence is really the ability to interact with people from all sorts of backgrounds via previous learning about different cultures, including beliefs, values, customs, etc. While cultural humility differs because it is more of a process of self-reflection that helps people understand and respect cultural differences and build those bridges, build those connections, have those conversations from that perspective of curiosity that you mentioned earlier.
Thank you, Cynthia. Diana.
For me, it would be respecting the unique backgrounds and beliefs of the parents that, for example, I work with, and in my own experience as a 3-time NICU mom, as an Afro-Latina, it really means being seen, feeling like I'm being seen and heard. That's super important.
Can you share a little bit more about what that meant for you as you were going through your own NICU experiences?
Seen and heard. For example, a provider just taking the time. I remember for my youngest, she needed surgery within like when she 2 months old. The first provider, I felt I needed to be explained so I can understand, like, how the surgery was going to affect her in the long term. I had no idea, I have no medical knowledge, so I wanted it to be broken down. Of course, I was anxious, just very concerned, going through all the emotions. And I remember my first provider was just like, well, they need surgery. This is it. Didn't explain, didn't break it down for me. And I just felt like, wow, okay, this is not going to work for me. And at that moment, I'm not one to challenge things or, but I was like, you know what, I need a second opinion because I'm not comfortable with your response. And that was the time where I realized I had to advocate for my baby. And it was just uncomfortable for me to even do that. And luckily, I found a provider that broke it down for me, drew a diagram, just taking the time and hearing me, like hearing, I don't understand, can you please explain? And just giving me that space and just listening to my concerns. That's super important.
Mm-hmm. What you said there about having a diagram drawn, I distinct, I recall one of the cardiologists coming in and doing exactly that, and sometimes something like that you can process it a little bit more easily than all of the words that are coming towards you. Yeah. Cynthia, what about you?
Absolutely. I hear you, Diana. Especially when you are in this situation, even though in any other scenario, you might have been able to absorb this information, process this information when you are in such a stressful moment in your life, especially being postpartum. It's very difficult to take all this and take all that terminology and make these long-lasting, big repercussion sort of decisions. When you feel that you are not comprehending the whole picture, you're not being given all the information you need. I can say for me, I would agree with the being seen, and I would add on the not being judged, especially when somebody is from a different cultural background or even the same cultural background, but different lived experiences. They might respond to situations in a very different way. I'm also a Latina, and my NICU stay was in Miami, so I was surrounded by other Latinos, and it whatever gene makes Hispanics, dramatic, I got that 3 times fold. So when I tell you I had a very short NICU stay, and like it was said during my introduction, it was because my baby was way too big. And so comparatively to other babies in the NICU, it almost seemed like this baby is humongous. He's fine. And he wasn't. But I understand how somebody just looking at that picture of me bawling next to my isolette with this massive baby in comparison to everyone else in the NICU, could have been a very easy judgment call for the staff or the providers or anyone else. So being seen, understood, and not judged, and understanding that is a difficult situation, that everybody processes these things differently, I think is a huge part of having that cultural acceptance, cultural humility. And at least it was in my case.
Thank you. Let's talk. You talked about background and situations, and in the introductions, I introduced you as Latinas, Afro Latinas. When we met initially to talk about this session, we kind of talked in more general terms about what Black Hispanic parents may be going through, or may have judgments placed upon them. So let's talk a little bit about some of those from both the perspectives of being a Black parent, a Black caregiver in the NICU, a Hispanic, or a combination, as well as other cultures.
I'll jump into that one.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that the one uniting factor, the one common thread for every parent in the NICU, for every family member in the NICU, it's that it's a stressful situation. It's usually an unplanned situation. It is not I like to say, especially in our groups, when we have our virtual support groups, we're in the club that nobody opted to be in, but we're here together, right? And having that openness and approaching these families with that awareness that we don't know every culture, that we don't know everybody's backstory, that we have no way of knowing whether that parent has a valid support system, or if that parent has been in the NICU before, if that parent has had a previous loss. All of those things truly impact how a person can process an experience like this. And the NICU can be a really scary place. So I would say one of the most important things, as far as being in my personal experience, being a mother in the NICU, the approach, the gentleness that I was offered, I think made all the difference. As I said, my NICU stay was in Miami. So though I am a minority, I wasn't a minority in my hospital. However, things like microaggressions, things like prejudices affect us in one way or another. And I would argue they affect everybody in one way or another. And we become more sensible to those things when we're in a fragile emotional state. And dependent on what history we have with those experiences, that could be more so the case. So what I appreciated most about my stay, I think, or my time in the NICU, was that gentility. That, like I said, I was one of the bawlers. I was one of the crying. I was going through tissue boxes, and the gentle taps and you know what, I'm gonna let you have your time and your space. That meant everything.
Yeah, the power of that human touch can be a game changer. Yeah,
absolutely.
Diana.
And for me, personally, I remember my last two pregnancies, well, before I delivered. So all my babies were NICU, but my last two, I remember going into the hospital, and I'm a pretty like positive, just, always optimistic. And I remember having so much anxiety walking in because of the statistics, of the mortality rates for Black moms, specifically, even for Latina moms, but I know they're more higher for Black moms. And I was just like, for my husband, I put a strong front, but I was just very anxious. I was like, God, I hope, I am able to walk out of here, not only for my baby to be okay, but for me to be okay. And that was just something I was very.
Oh, looks like we may have lost Diana.
No.
Okay, Cynthia, it's just you and me. I was actually going to ask. Oh, there you go.
I am so sorry.
Okay, no worries, Diana. I'm glad you're back.
Yes, it just literally cut off. Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry. I was gonna say, when I facilitate my groups specifically for Black families, something that resonates with a lot of us is the anxiety. Already walking into the hospital to deliver, knowing those statistics, it just piles on, right, to everything else. And then after that, your baby being in the NICU is another layer of anxiety. And a lot of times I speak to my moms, when they speak to me, they're like, I was afraid to question certain things. I was afraid to say how I was feeling. And sometimes anxiety, right, or stress may appear like anger to certain people, because it comes out differently. And again, one thing that I say to providers, that's very important, is like trying not to take the way a parent responds or reacts personally. A lot of times it has nothing to do with you or the service that you're providing. Many times it's dealing with their traumatic birth. It's dealing with knowing the statistics, right? It's microaggressions that they may experience in other environments. Just maybe something that someone said, and it's just adding on, again, already with what they're feeling in that state, it just piles on. And a lot of time people may perceive it as, oh, this is an angry Black woman. So again, we may be feeling a certain way, but be afraid to express ourselves. And a lot of times when you feel that, it's almost like it's not a safe space for them. When you feel like you're being judged, when you feel like, also remembering, I also have a lot of moms tell me, I feel like I have to look a certain way in order to be respected, for them to know that I have an education, because again, assumptions are made. Very sadly, assumptions are made based on how we look. So a lot of times I have moms like, just concerned with how they look. Are they professional? Do they appear professional enough? So again, with all the anxieties that we're already dealing with, our baby in NICU, feeling like we don't have control of a situation. Maybe sometimes, again, you can be the best provider, but we're going through so much already that we're not even, a lot of times postpartum, we're not even in a state of mind where we can, it's just so much going on. And I think a lot of times, just like Cynthia said, just a small gesture of kindness or mindfulness. And I think empathy, like maybe putting yourself in that person's shoe, like what they're going through right now. A lot of times we're going through postpartum. I went through major postpartum. Again, it's not easy, and just really, really not taking those interactions personally, because like I said, a lot of times it has nothing to do with you. And just compassion goes a long way. Compassion goes a long way, and empathy.
And as you were talking, I was reminded of what Kelly had said at the end of the keynote session about, almost having to put up a front, being showing that you were the perfect parent, put together, holding it together, and just, thinking that the way that you're acting is going to reflect upon the care that your baby is going to get. Going back, you talked about just before you got cut off, actually, you were expressing some of those fears that you were experiencing about being, labeled as, the angry Black woman, or, just other things. what did you ever express any of that to any of the providers, or did you keep it all to yourself?
No, I'm actually, like Cynthia, fortunate. I'm in an environment where a lot of the staff look like me. So I didn't feel that. I didn't feel like they perceived that. But a lot of the moms that I spoke with are in states where, a lot of the staff no do not look like them, do not maybe just understand their perspective. So it's not a conversation that I feel like they would feel one, like, I don't think you would want to have that conversation with someone, like, it's a difficult space, I think, to navigate, to say,
Right.
well, I don't want you to perceive me a certain way. As humans, we just want to know that whatever space we're in, we're accepted, we're treated like everyone else. And again, a lot of times I think the moms that I've spoken to, even from my own experience, I'm like, well, I don't want to be perceived as bossy. I don't want them to think that I'm questioning what they're doing, their experience. So I always come from an approach of humbleness. I ask in certain ways just to make sure. And a lot of the moms that I speak with that are Black, that are Afro-Latina, the same thing. We kind of alter so we're not perceived a certain way. And then we're human, though, right? We're going to have moments where, yes, we're going to be upset. We're going to be angry. We're going to question. And I think it should be okay for them to do those things and not feel like, well, now, am I going to be treated a certain way? Is my baby not going to be treated right or given the attention they need because I questioned, or because, so that's another scary component where you're like, now is my baby going to be safe because I questioned them? So that, again, just adds on to everything else that's going on.
Thank you, Diana. Cynthia, did you have anything to add there?
Absolutely. I think we can learn a lot from Diana's lived experience, the stories we hear in our groups and that I hear in my counseling sessions. And it can be, I'll just add on that it can be really hard to hear these things. It can be really hard. It doesn't come naturally, I think, to us as humans to like check ourselves and to really like turn that attention inward. But I think everyone here on this session, attending to this and that chose to be here today, it did so because they are looking for those actionable points. They're looking for ways to bridge those gaps. So they're looking for a way to understand. That is so incredibly needed in this field. That's so we as an organization are so appreciative of providers that are willing to sort of sit down and just embrace the experiences of others and take from that what can be taken into use. Just, I mean, tomorrow when you walk into your clinics, your hospitals, your place of work. And though these things can be hard to hear, I'm listening to you, Diane, and I'm like, yes, oh my gosh, yes. And it can be heavy. But I just wanted to add in there that I'm so appreciative of everyone willing to listen and to course correct if needed because of what we're sharing here today.
I'm going to ask you, thank you both of you. I'm going to ask you both to put your hand to hold hats on. You both work in the virtual space. You have virtual support groups. You have counselling clients. Thinking about our session title about cultural considerations, or whichever terminology you want to use, what does that mean to you when I guess you've talked a little bit about what parents have shared, but what does that what do these considerations mean for you when you're supporting those families in those spaces? But then also, what are you hearing?
Jump into that one.
Right. I know that Diana did touch upon some of that already.
Yeah. To me, the term cultural consideration simply means bridging a gap. That's how I've approached it, and that's how I define it for myself professionally. Approaching families with curiosity, openness. Again, no one expects you to know everything about everyone or every culture, but approaching families with a human to human approach, I think is pretty culturally hardly consider it enough. Acknowledging that you may have preconceived notions about anyone. I myself sometimes have preconceived notions about other Hispanics, like, and it just happens. It comes from previous experience. Our brains are work without our permission. Many times we operate off learned experience. And simply because you've lived a life and you've had experiences and encounters, you're going to have some preconceived notions about people who wear really tall heels, or people who wear bonnets, or people who wear suits, So acknowledging those and moving forward with that awareness, plus a willingness to learn and connect, makes all the difference in the world. Like I said, the NICU is stressful period. Even in cases where the NICU stay is just a few days, it can leave a lasting impact on parents and family members. It shifts the trajectory of that family's birth story and the beginning of that baby's life. So having practitioners out there that are just operating under this cape of sensitivity, this cape of gentleness, openness, ability to connect, that in itself is a great place to start.
I love that cape of sensitivity.
Yeah.
I also like that you mentioned visual cues, and yes, we do sometimes have our preconceived ideas about somebody who may be wearing something or has a certain look about them, and certainly reading those cues can be really important and can be significant from both sides. Diana, what did you have to add?
I know with our support groups, one of the most important things that I can do for our parents is validate their emotions, and just let them know that it's okay for them to feel however they're feeling. I've had moms just come in and tell me, I felt like I wasn't allowed to be angry in the space. Or I had another mom where she remembers like the second day after she went to visit her baby in the NICU, and she went in, she was crying, bawling. And she told me, she had shared with us that one of the nurses told her, "I thought you were over that." and she was just like, she was just like, I really tried to keep it together. She's like, I'm crying, it's her child, her baby. She just gave birth postpartum, and she was in shock. She couldn't believe that, someone had told her, like, I thought you were over this. And of course that impacted her. She still, years later, it's something that still stayed with her. Like, she's like, I felt like I wasn't allowed to feel a certain way. And I was like, no. And I was like, of course, just saying, I'm sorry that happened to you. And you should never be made to feel like that, because whatever you're feeling is okay. And again, just allowing parents to feel how they feel, because we're all humans. And again, we had said this, we all respond differently. And just one thing that's really important is, like we said, empathy and kindness. And maybe if you haven't been in that situation personally, just maybe thinking, how would I feel if I was in that situation?
Right. We haven't really talked or touched upon I guess family dynamics. I guess the traditional family. Well, what does traditional family mean? It's just a family unit can look so different for across the board and for so many in so many ways. And it's not your typical mum, dad. It can be extended family as well, who are participating in the care. And I know that we had talked previously about how family dynamics may affect communication in the NICU, and sometimes mothers in certain cultures may take a back seat. So the father is the parent who is taking on board the majority of the communication. Some parents may have to go back to work, and so they might be largely absent in the NICU, but it doesn't mean to say that they don't want to be in the NICU, but there are other things going on in their lives. And so I think, sometimes people can be quick to judge, well, that parent is never here, or just other quick judgments that without really delving into the why. And that's where I think, just judgments and preconceptions can be made.
Absolutely. And that really goes back to what we said earlier about, our brains are machines, and they are constantly just making these decisions, observations, assumptions without our consent. We might have that thought in passing, oh, well, that parent's never here, period. Move on to the next thing. And that we might not pay that thought any attention. And it's based in reality, right? If what you know is that this parent comes in for an hour every other day, you are probably going to have some feeling about that because you care about this baby and because you see all the other parents and what they're doing. But just checking yourself, grabbing that thought and saying, well, that is true. I see that this parent is here 1 hour every other day, but that is all I know. There are other pieces to that puzzle, to that story that I'm not privy to, so I can't paint a whole picture with just that one piece of information, which can be really challenging because we operate this way all the time, for efficiency reasons, I suppose. Our minds are just cataloged in this manner. But in this particular space, in the NICU, when we're providing services for families in such a fragile state, for parents in such a delicate emotional time, just acknowledging that those thoughts, that those assumptions are happening in your mind, and just holding on to them for a second and just acknowledging the fact that we don't have all the information most of the time, can make all the difference, because all the other decisions you might have made under those preconceived notions will now be altered because you have that notion, you held on to it, but now you also have the accompanying thought of, plus there might be more.
Right.
Yeah, and I was going to add to that. I've heard from several, when it comes to the Black family groups, many moms expressing that they were questioned if they were married or not. And one I remember was just like, yes, I'm actually married. Because of her husband's schedule, he wasn't able to come, into the NICU. And I have some that are just like, I make sure my husband now goes because I don't want to be seen as a single mother, as a single Black mother, because of a comment that was made to them. And I think, again, that human connection is so important because when you connect with that parent, I think they're more willing to share. Maybe not that sometimes I know you don't want to hear the whole story, but I think when there's that human connection, people are willing to share with you, like, hey, my husband, whatever, my husband's actually can't come in, or, they'll just share part of their story because they feel like safe, like you have a connection, like, their story matters. And again, I know that provider staff, they have so much to do, and so many responsibilities that may be hard. But I think just, like I said, even the kindest gesture, hey, how are you today? Just any sort of connection, just allows the parent to feel like safe to share, I think. And it just takes that awkwardness. And like Cynthia says, you bridge that gap. Because just a small token of them seeing like, okay, they're asking me, like, they, from a point of curiosity, or because, you care, people are more willing to share, right, a little bit of their story or of their journey, and you get a better idea of where they're coming from or just what they're experiencing.
Right. Another thing it reminds me of from our keynote this morning, who talked about and this is something that I feel really strongly about, just making a note of the baby's name, using the baby's name, but then also adding some of the social aspects to that family, humanizing, personalizing, individualizing every parent, regardless of who they are. And I was going to add that it's not just providers who make judgments about, that parent's never there. Other parents notice that as well, and they may say, I'm here every day, for 8 hours a day, and that poor baby never gets a visitor. Again, we don't see that whole picture. None of us know the whole picture. But again, that curiosity can help bridge that gap, as you've mentioned, Cynthia. I've been looking at the chat, and there are some really great things being added there. Some questions about, what educational options there may be for assessment tools for cultural competence, to measure cultural competence. And yeah, just the emotions, guilt, and so on. I will keep skimming through that. I did want to now just ask you, just thinking about parents who, well, both of you speak more than one language. In the NICU, as you said, almost all parents are already disoriented in this very unfamiliar, very frightening setting. Language barriers can further intensify that distress. And already we feel as NICU parents that we don't have any control, and I can't imagine having to navigate that in in a language that I don't understand, or that I have limited knowledge of. So thinking about families whose first language is not the primary language spoken um, um, by those around them, what can providers do to well, I guess to practice cultural humility, but also to bring in additional layers of support? What have you heard from parents who you've supported?
Yeah, definitely. I will add in there also was the things I've prepared to point out. Language barriers, but also educational barriers.
Yes.
Also offer a huge barrier for parents as well. So apart from the stressor of traversing the NICU, one huge issue I see come up again and again with my patients is language and verbiage. Medical terminology and lingo is tough and sometimes scary enough. Some of the terms, some of the names to some of these conditions sound really, really scary, and are confusing enough that even when you're trying to siphon for support from a family member, or you're trying to relay information to another parent, you forget what these terms are, and you can't even express what it is that you're stressed about because you can't even remember what the name of the thing is. So when you introduce the issue of language barriers, a difficult and confusing situation becomes even more difficult and confusing. So bridging that gap in language by any means, however small, is better than nothing. Even if it means you're relying on good old Google Translate, even if you're relying on flashcards, even anything, just the effort makes a huge impact. And what I would say, I would challenge all providers and practitioners on this session to create some sort of toolbox to tackle language barriers. Have a translation cheat sheet, videos you can share with family. I know that there are several videos already on YouTube and places like that that describe certain ailments in different languages. You can make a playlist of those and be able to share those in the languages that are most common in your practice. Really anything that would create an easement for you as providers to tackle those barriers. The bigger the easement, the more likely we are to use them. Like it's been said here before, we are all understanding that you as providers have so much on your plates. You have so many pressures already through your work. And this is really one more thing that we are sort of having a call to action for you to include in your practice, which is no small ask. So that would be my challenge to you, to have a toolbox, some sort of easy access thing that you can have that best meets the needs of your place of service. The cheat sheets work really well. Something as simple as translations for common medical terms is there. I know some hospitals, they have those discharge sheets, the ones you get at the ER or the urgent care when you have like an ear infection or like a sprained ankle, and they hand it to you and it has like the medical name of what you've got and some of the symptoms and your plan of care and things like that. A lot of NICUs have those same sheets for specific ailments, and they have them in several languages. So, I mean, you're not going to have the same level of connection with that sheet of paper as you would with a doctor speaking your primary language, but at least it's better than nothing. It's better than a provider coming in expressing these terms that are hard enough for a native speaker to understand most of the time, to somebody who is not a native speaker. And you'll get a lot of what I like to call the immigrant nod, which is just a lot of this, and you're expressing all these things, and you're doing your due diligence, expressing names, what this means for prognosis, what this means for treatment, possible treatments and things like that. And they're looking and they're doing that immigrant nod, and they're getting 2% sometimes, even less sometimes. But it's just sort of what's been built in to a lot of cultures to survive here. And and on your end, that just seems like, oh, they got it, they understand. So having these backups, having these tools sort of counteract some of those barriers for these parents. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah. And I thank you for mentioning the immigrant nod, because I wish Shirin was here, so she'd be able to talk about she talked about the Indian nod, where they may she may be not shaking her head but actually meaning yes. So there are all these again visual cues that may be misinterpreted or misunderstood. Diana, did you have anything to add?
I was gonna say, I guess just having maybe some patience and grace, and maybe following up with a few questions and just letting them know, like, if they don't, that the information may be technical, that it's okay if they don't understand, that you can explain it again. Because again, even without the language barrier, sometimes we have no idea what is being said to us, and a lot of times because of the state that we're in, a lot of times you're like, yes, but really inside your mind is thinking of 20 other things and trying to process the information that you're giving us. So on top of that, a language barrier just makes it all the more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
So just some follow-up questions, just letting them know, like, hey, I need to explain it like I can, no worries, and letting them know that it's okay.
Amanda has posted in the chat, I had a patient this past week who spoke a particular dialect that didn't have translation services available. Fortunately, the father spoke English fairly well and was able to assist with translation. I stayed and spoke with them at length, and even just asking them questions about their journey here and their home country and differences and similarities. That's fantastic. Just that, that you're already establishing a relationship and communication with them. And yeah, they were so appreciative of our discussion. I felt bad that they expressed this was the first time someone had asked some of these questions. Some of these things we discussed was so simple, but went so far for them.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, what we mean when we say approach with curiosity. And we understand that the opportunity to sit with someone and ask all these questions is a privilege in a lot of medical settings. But that's exactly what we're talking about when we say approach with curiosity. And that brings I want to piggyback off what Diana said. Give that warning in the beginning, like, hey, we're about to get really technical really fast, so just know, are you in the right headspace? Are the doors open? Can I place all this on your lap? Assess for understanding, ask follow-up questions, make sure that there's an actual transfer of information during that conversation. And if you want to apply one small thing starting tomorrow, slow down. I think a lot of the times, because of the nature of the medical field, a lot of the times the information needs to be passed along quickly. And that's where you'll get a lot of those, sure, because parents are picking up on that rush sometimes, and they are just almost wanting to get out of that conversation. So if you can either slow down, get curious, ask follow-up questions to assess for understanding, and in a perfect world, do all of those things, I think it'll make a huge difference for your families.
Yeah. There's a comment in the chat about not different languages, ASL as well. And then thinking about going back to some of the biases there, and I can't remember who wrote it in the chat about being prejudices that we may feel towards single parents, teen mothers. That I feel like that can be pretty common as well. What additional practices do you think can help build trust and collaboration between providers and parents? In my mind, I'm thinking, well, yes, trauma-informed care, family-centered care, but what, we don't want those just to be words. We want those to be put into practice. But what are your thoughts on building those collaborative relationships?
I really believe it all goes back to rapport, building that just basis, that foundation, even if it's just on, I'm here to support you, whether you need it or not. I think and maybe it's a cultural thing, but with mothers, it's never steered me wrong. Just the tap is so powerful. I think making that actual physical connection with another human being is really powerful. I'm not a hugger, but the taps I love. And the checking in, the popping in your head. How are you? How are you really? Because you're gonna get oh, we're good, or we're fine, or one of those. But pausing and letting somebody actually tell you how they're doing, even if you can't do anything about it, can be extremely powerful. And so those little things, the tap, the popping your head in, checking in, the asking follow-up questions, goes to building that rapport. And once you have established that rapport, the good thing about that is no matter how long your NICU stay is, like once you've built those relationships, they stick. Once those parents have entrusted you, once those parents have built that bridge with you, that sticks, and that can be also very powerful.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Yeah, and just following with what Cynthia said, the human connection, I can't express how important that is, because once you create that connection, there's just like the space that you create of trust, right? And it feels like a safer space, and the parent can feel open to share with you, and maybe even let you in on maybe what's going on. And like I said, even no matter how culturally different, I know in a lot of spaces, I've worked in spaces where I'm the only one that looks like me. And I've had conversations with people and they're like, well, I don't know what to say. If I say this, it may come off wrong. And I'm like, one of the rules that I always go by, which is like a motto that we tell kids, is like, treat everyone how you would like to be treated. And that always helps me in any space that I'm in. And it's always steered me the right way. And I'm like, everyone just wants to feel like accepted, feel like they're cared for. And just like Cynthia said, when you come from a point of curiosity, you may not know, right? Because we're all different. Even if we're from the same culture, there's still going to be a lot of differences. But just coming from an angle where you're curious and you're not assuming, I think that's so important, because they're like, oh, okay, they just, they're curious, they want to know, instead of maybe coming off as like you're assuming. And I think once you have that connection, I think it can break so many barriers, and just a space where they can trust you, and trust what you're saying. And they don't have to feel like on the edge or, react a certain way because they don't feel safe. So just like I said, a small gesture of kindness goes such a long way.
Right, exactly. And similar to what was said in the chat, sometimes it's just the little things, or, even if you don't speak the language, if we're talking about language barriers, even if you just maybe learn, a couple of words and, thumbs up and, a check-in or a no agenda visit, where, you are holding space for that. I mean, that's what we do as family support specialists, but it doesn't have to be limited to peer support. Just allowing a person to communicate with you in different ways, even if it's just if there is a language barrier, maybe show that they want to show photos of their other children from their phone, or just little things that can build those connections, and then along with the physical connection as well that you mentioned, Cynthia. I want to have a look at the chat because there's some really good stuff in there. I don't know whether you guys are looking at it.
I have been peeking.
that I wanted. Stacey, we recently had one of our nurses develop a new team, Juntos en NICU. Oh, it just popped down. And this team focuses on making sure we have language barriers addressed via signage and education materials. It's made a big difference to have bilingual signs, Spanish and English in our unit. I love to hear that because, you know, here at Hand to Hold, we really try and push to have everything in English and Spanish in our partner hospitals. Let's have a look. Sitting and being eye level. Yes. Yeah. That shows, I feel like that's a cue telling the parent, I have time for you, you know, rather than standing, you know, kind of then that I'm losing my words now. You know, just if you're the authority figure, you know, you standing over a parent, you know, when you come down to eye level, that can really make a difference as well. And I think it can, you know, make parents create a safe space for parents to think, okay, this person has time for me.
Absolutely. There's a very good question that I want to address really quickly from the chat.
Tell me, because I think I might be missing some. Yeah.
Heather asked, or excuse me, Anne, about being in a support role in the hospitals and witnessing providers sort of commenting on, I might have gotten the name wrong. I'm thinking there's a lot of questions, but commenting on patients, I'm assuming, and families, and if there's any ideas on calling them out politely, and how to traverse those
Here we go. Do you want me to read it out, Cynthia? I found it.
Found it. Okay.
As a NICU social worker, I find that some providers seem to almost enjoy making unwarranted comments. Is this what you're thinking about? Unwarranted comments about people's preferences and choices. In some ways, I think it's a kind of venting in order to process through this hard work. Regardless, these comments make me feel mad because I find them disrespectful. Yes, I often feel that I'm not calling them out as much as I should, and there's definitely a guilt there. With that said, I often feel like I'm constantly balancing my relationship with the providers with that of patients. Anyone else feel this way or have any good experience with managing this push-pull? That's a great question.
Very good question. It's actually, it's not the same question, but it's
along
sentence. No, it's perfect. And that can be a very awkward situation considering that these providers are part of your team, right? They're part of your staff. They're the people that you will continue to see once that family has exited the NICU. These are the people that you have an established rapport and relationship with. So it can be hard, it can be hard to call out family or friends when they've sort of stepped in it. And my suggestion to you, if you want to take the gentler approach, if these comments are being made at you, something very simple that you can do is not engage. So if a doctor, a nurse, a provider of any sort is coming along saying, would you believe XYZ and this and that, silence can be very powerful in those scenarios, and just not engaging. People pick up on those cues without you having to say loudly, that is not okay, and you need to learn some cultural humility. You can hold space for that silence and let them sit with what they've just said. You can pick up on a few things that we've said here about having one fact versus an entire picture. You can, if it's happening, if you're witnessing it and it's not happening directly through you, I would say it really depends on the dynamics within your team and within your care facility. But calling someone out is never really going to feel comfortable. It's not really in our nature to come and, you know, you're really parenting these people that are in your team that are also adults. So it's never going to feel comfortable. But if it is important to you and it weighs on you and you're battling that guilt, I would say something as simple as those nonverbal cues can go a really long way. And then on the other end of that, you can just say, that's not okay. Just exit stage left.
And chiming in with Cynthia, I worked for an organization which we were very big on feedback. So whenever there was a situation with coworkers or we were on the same team, you know, obviously in a private space, you know, and again, it depends on the dynamics and if you even feel comfortable, but it was a positive way of saying, we would be like, okay, I have some if I could share some feedback with you. Again, but that made it sounds a little bit more positive. And that's something that I left there practicing a lot, and I loved it. And yeah, it was just a great practice. And I was like, can I give you some feedback? And then, again, in a space where it's not in front of others. And again, I know that the dynamics matter, but I felt like that helped, especially because I'm not the type that's confrontational or anything like that. But that helped me in certain situations. Instead of like calling someone out, it's like, hey, if I could share some feedback with you of something that I saw or overheard. And sometimes you can get clarity on that.
Yeah. I think that kind of answers another question that I've just seen in the Q&A, ideas for politely calling providers out while acting as a trusted go-between among providers and parents. There is another question. I know we're getting close to time. Suggestions for how to help parents move forward after a negative or insensitive comment has been made towards them.
I would say with that, for example, like what Christine said, we hold space. That's what we do in our support groups. And one thing in my role is like, I know that I'm not there to fix, right, or make them essentially feel better about their situation, because a lot of times it's just me holding space and letting them, whether it's vent, express how they're feeling in that moment. And I think that's the best thing that you can do to support a parent, is letting them process it, how they're processing, and giving them the space to share it. I think that's super helpful, because helping a parent, like, I don't feel like I can help a parent move forward, right? They have to process it in their own way, their own timing, depending what's going on. But I think the best thing to do to help a parent is just hold space for them and letting them know that you see them and you hear them, and that you're there, right? And that you care. I think that's the best way to help a parent. But whether they move forward or not, I think like that's not something that we have control of.
Absolutely.
So we have a
I'll
couple
add
of
to that.
Cynthia, before you let me just remind everybody here. Well, I just want to say thank you to everybody for coming, but also that about our next session after the break. Don't miss it. It's Dr. Craig Garfield and Crystal Grogan who will be talking about discharge planning, engaging and integration of NICU parents from day one, and that starts at 2:15 Central. But yeah, let's get some key takeaways that you'd like to share with some of our attendees here.
Yes. So for the question Diana just answered, and in general, as support for these parents, everyone in these fields usually are they have caretaker abilities. We come into this field with really big hearts, and something that's really powerful. And not only when there is a specific complaint that a parent has and they need to traverse that experience, but in general, providing them their options, just outlining their options. Like Diana said, we can't fix most of these things for these parents, and a lot of these things are not in their control, but just outlining options for a person can be a very, very helpful method of support. So here are the things that are available to you. I can sit and listen. I can help you file a report. I can help you facilitate a discussion with this person, etc. And these are the things that are in front of you, and that on its own can be supportive and helpful.
Diana, any final quick words?
Again, just small acts of kindness, and just look for that connection that you could create with that parent, and that'll go such a long way and just make the whole process and NICU stay so much easier for everyone.
Yeah, loving curiosity. I think they're my two words that I'm going to take away. So thank you so much, Cynthia and Diana. Really enjoyed doing this panel with you all, and thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.